Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film Underdogs. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the film Underdogs, it was an Argentinian Spanish animated film that was supposed to come out in America last August, but then was pulled from theaters. That was the fourth time it had been pulled from theaters, from August 2014, then moved to January 2015, then April 2015, then August 2015, and then nothing. And then suddenly it was on Netflix this week, and I decided, hey, I should review Underdogs. And it was released internationally before as Metagol in Argentina, where it was actually a pretty big hit, and then The Unbeatables in the United Kingdom. And I keep reading it was called Foosball, although I haven't actually figured out where it was called Foosball, so maybe it was, or it wasn't. There's more evidence to show that it was not called that, and people just put that somewhere, but who knows. Kind of the typical foreign animated film that is bought by the Weinstein Company, redubbed and tried to be Americanized and released in US theaters, and this never got that chance. However, if you watch the version on Netflix, it is the dub made for American audiences that never saw the light of day in theaters, but just got to be on Netflix, which has people like Taron Killam and Mel Brooks and Nicholas Hoult and Ariana Grande, and that cut got released only on Netflix because, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure if the Weinstein Company just kind of gave up on this, which probably was for the best, considering I don't think this film was going to make a ton of money anyway, or it actually could be one of those things where Netflix has kind of fought people actually in court over the film Masterminds that it should go out on Netflix first because they have an arranged upon agreement based on a certain release date and tried to release it on Netflix first. Netflix lost that lawsuit, but I'm wondering if maybe Netflix went to the Weinstein Companies and said, hey, we're going to release this, and Weinstein Company went, oh, well, I kind of don't give a shit, so whatever. And it just kind of happened. I like that version, although I have nothing to back it up. But there's that precedent of that Masterminds case, which was an often delayed Zach Galifianakis comedy that's supposedly going to come out in September, and this whole thing with relativity, and I won't really get into all of that. Underdogs is probably an unlikely film for me to review, as I do not know or like football, or as most Americans call it, soccer, and the script is of the quality of things like Food Fight and Norm of the North. Well, it's not actually that kind of bad, but in terms of the actual dialogue, it is that kind of bad, since the people who wrote this film and directed the original film did not, apparently, I guess, write the dialogue for this dub, or to my understanding didn't. This was actually directed by Juan Jose Campanella, who actually also directed the film The Secrets in Their Eyes, which came out in 2009 and won the Oscar for Best Foreign Film, and then he also directed the US remake, which came out last year and bombed. So last year was like really not a good year for him in terms of American box office, like whatsoever, so I'm sorry for you guys. This seems to be a really weird choice for him to direct after Secrets in Their Eyes. I have not seen either version, although people have asked me to, and I just haven't. I'm sorry, I should, particularly the foreign film, but it really doesn't make any sense he would even direct something like this, and based on the film I saw, I hope he does not direct another animated film like this, because frankly it isn't very good, although he has a very interesting filmography in TV doing things like The Upright Citizens Brigade, so you think like maybe he could get something like this to work, but I would definitely say he didn't. It's not like one of those where you go, oh well, you know, the visuals are great. No, it's kind of just crappy generic CG animation, which is sad because it is actually the most expensive Argentinian film ever made, and it's the most expensive Latin American animated film ever made, and it came out looking like this, which is sad when you think like someone with more of a vision and a better idea of character design could have made a much better movie for a lot less, and they made crap like this, especially with the terrible hackneyed dialogue, which isn't his fault, I guess. It's a pretty unremarkable, terrible failure, and it kind of succeeds in not being the overall shit shows that Norm of the North and Food Fight are being, making it kind of bland in its own defeat. Jake, who made his own foosball table, which they don't really get into the mechanics of that shit, but he did. I don't know if he just like made his own players on an already made foosball table. That's kind of what it looks like. They don't really get into that, which is kind of interesting, but this film isn't really good at interesting. So Jake has this foosball table, and he works at this deli or restaurant or whatever, and he has been working there for a while and has fallen in love with this girl Laura, and then one day this bully Ace comes in, and he's like really into football or soccer and stuff. He wins all the time, and he's gonna beat Jake on his foosball table and impress Laura, even though Laura already hates him. And then they play, and Jake wins because he's really good at his foosball table and knows these players very well and all this crap, and actually beats Ace, and it humiliates Ace, who then becomes a huge huge football star internationally. Again, we're not talking about football in America, we're talking about like soccer and shit, you know what I mean? Just to clarify. Just to clarify. Also, because I forget, because I don't care about sports. So, big shock. The movie guy doesn't really give a shit about sports. Sorry, I know it's a big deal internationally, but not in my heart. You can't control my heart. Worlds, I guess. Anyway, so then Ace becomes a huge football star and comes back to the town and says he's going to buy the town and destroy it and make it into a stadium, which I don't think any sports person makes that much money. That just seems unbelievable. But whatever. He does that, and then he's going to destroy the restaurant first because it was his one failure, and sort of takes the foosball game, but then doesn't. But you'd think if he's going to spend all this money on this thing, he would have taken the food. Like, it disappears, and then it goes to a dump, and then they're going to get it, and you're like, why didn't they just take that first? Like, it's just like Jake takes the foosball player guy he likes the most and he cries on it. And because he's such a little bitch, the foosball guys come to life. Just that guy first comes to life, but then they all come to life. But I guess Jake's enough of a little bitch that they all come to life. And then they're going to defeat Ace and get the town back because Laura asked them to set the bet, and then he says we should play real football, and that's what they do. Yeah. So Underdogs is really bad. That goes without saying. It's unavoidable. But one of its biggest problems isn't really something that has anything to do with dubs. Well, I mean, that's still a problem. But it's also that this story is just trying to be two different sports movies. One is a sports movie you've seen like a million times before. The other isn't, but that doesn't make it good. The first is, if you've seen the trailer, I'm going off the American one because that's the dub I saw, and I do not care about this movie enough to see multiple dubs and compare them. Like, who cares? Because actually, you know, a lot of people don't bring this up a lot, but there's a UK dub and an American dub. Like, what a waste of time. Just release the UK dub or just make an American dub. Don't do both. I know The Secret World of Arietti did that as well, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like, why even bother with that? I understand they're not going to read subtitles, but like, why have two dubs? They're both speaking English. Like, it's just the stupidest thing I've ever heard, and a huge waste of money. When the Hollywood collapses, people will look at these things and go like, are you fucking serious? So anyway, there are three dubs of this, apparently the original Spanish dub, UK dub, and the American dub, at least to my knowledge. But anyway, one of the biggest problems with this is that this film, if you watch the trailer, and I rewatched the trailer painfully, and because I hate myself, I rewatched the trailer, the American trailer, and it kind of sets up that Jake, you know, the whole town thing with Ace and all that nonsense, but then his foosball players come to life, and then they play a game against this greatest football team ever or something. And here's the thing, is they drop that foosball thing like midway through, and then he has to form a team of people from the town to play Ace and this big soccer team that's gonna stop him and stuff. And the thing is that like, that is its own movie. You don't really need to have foosball players coming to life for that. And the fact that this film kind of drops them after a certain point makes you go, well, why have the foosball players come to life? I mean, you already have this other movie. The foosball players coming to life doesn't really do anything plot-wise, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I guess it's just to be a cute kids movie is the sort of idea. It's based on a story. What's it based on? Oh, I'm sorry. It's not based on a story. Let me clarify. It is inspired by a short story called Memoirs of a Right Wing, which sounds like a Republican's memoir or something. And it's by an Argentinian writer. So maybe his was about the foosball players come to life and they somehow made this abomination. But yeah, so the foosball players come to life and kind of motivate him and sort of help out in the game. But it's like, this film is really about him forming this team. That's really the plot of the movie. But then like, why have the foosball players coming to life? So it can't even do either one of those plots well. It kind of just tries to do both of them, and it comes out as a total mess because it's like, you already have foosball players coming to life. Just, that's good enough. That's pretty cool. Not many people have their foosball player teams come to life. I had a foosball table. It never happened to me. Why not do things with that possibility? That would be something at least. But they like completely drop it for this other plot that's pretty hackneyed, and neither are very funny. All the jokes in this are kind of like those things that people who don't understand humor or communication or jokes at all say, like that shitty guy at your job who says something and you look at them and go, it was a joke, and you look at them like, what you said was a joke? Oh, that's how you communicate with people? You're not very good at jokes or understand how talking works. That's kind of how the humor in Underdogs is. because it's really bad. And like nothing is funny in this at all. It is horrible. I mean, it's kind of like that, like I'm super sarcastic and smarmy, and you're like, and there's a joke here? Oh, there isn't. It's just you being an asshole. I love it when people do like asshole stuff and you go, get it? I'm an asshole. I go, no, there's no ironic thing. You're just a dick. And so much like how that guy at your work is actually a dick and isn't actually funny, Underdogs is not a funny movie and is really, really bad. I don't really get why the Weinsteins bought this movie even, particularly because they treated it so poorly, which isn't out of character for the Weinsteins necessarily. I kind of just don't get it because it's not like soccer is really that big over here. It's certainly getting bigger, and there's certain audiences that maybe would have seen this, and especially in a year that was like the year after the World Cup, you'd think like maybe if they put it out a year before. This film actually came out in 2013 everywhere else that wasn't America, and like that probably would have been a better year, or had it come out in 2014 when there was a World Cup. But they fucked up, of course, when the original release date was 2014. Wow, you guys just like really fucked up. Wow. The only thing I could ever say about this film that's kind of a compliment is when the foosball players do come to life, they have chip paint and they look very worn in, and they're supposed to have been around for a while, and they actually look at something that like Toy Story doesn't really have as much in the characters. They have some chip paint, but not to the extent of this. And if you were a kid growing up and played with your action figures like as much as I did, that certainly happened after a certain point. So I actually thought that was an interesting detail and something that I thought worked pretty well. But the designs are really, really ugly. Character designs from people who are like, I remember cartoons from when I was a kid, but haven't actually watched a cartoon in forever. It's really, really an ugly looking movie. There are worse animated films that like were uncompleted, and I've seen worse animation, and it was like completed, and I was shocked they spent so much money on it because I don't really know really where it went. None of the shots are particularly good. None of it's assembled very well. It's kind of just a mess of an animated film done by people who have absolutely no love for the format whatsoever, and you just get this film that doesn't really understand what kind of story it's telling, what kind of story it's doing, and you think, oh, no wonder they totally just dumped this movie, because it's just a shitty, terrible film. I'm assuming the Argentinian film is maybe better, and if I spoke Spanish, you know, maybe I could review that, maybe people like it more, but I get the impression that most people think it's awful, although I think it did better critically over there, so maybe. But as of the film I saw here, it is a terrible travesty of something to watch, but not in the worst bad movie way that is actually the worst and laughable animated films like Food Fight and Norm of the North. It's just bad and terrible and unremarkable, and like, why am I watching this? Why didn't I just let this go? You didn't have to review this. You could have just let it go. It didn't come out in theaters. What am I doing with my life? And if a movie's making me think that, I know it's not good because I don't want to think about those things. And Underdogs ruined all that. Fuck you, Underdogs. You ruined it all. And I don't like this movie. It is really absolutely horrible. Do not check it out on Netflix, even ironically, because it's not even worth that. It is just an ultimately terrible disaster of an animated film about something that most of us are not even interested in, but I have a feeling if you are interested in, it's not going to be honestly that good either. So it's done by people who, I don't even think these people like football or soccer or whatever the fuck it is. I don't think they like animation, and I don't know what they had any business doing making a film like this, because it doesn't even like being the kind of film, whichever the foosball coming alive thing or the band of misfits forming a sports team kind of movie. I don't know what kind of movie it was, but it just failed on all fronts. I don't think it did anything very well except for show the foosball players had chip paint. So if you're really into that, this movie's for you. But if you have any semblance of taste and want to stay away from things that you really shouldn't watch in front of an open flame, it actually sets that on Netflix before you watch this. It is just a terrible, boring, upsetting, awful movie, and there's really no reason to ever watch it, and I really wish I hadn't, and I feel like I wasted part of my time on Earth by watching it. Not that you can ever get that time back, and now this movie reminds me of my incoming mortality and will remind you of your incoming mortality and how you cannot avoid it. So you should really avoid this movie, because Underdogs is no underdog, because it should really absolutely be forgotten and left buried on Netflix for no one to ever find again. So if you have seen Underdogs and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.